Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Drum Corps Coffee Shop podcast. I'm here with George, as always.
Super excited for this episode.
Dude, I mean, it's only been a few weeks since our last episode,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, I've just been sitting here in anticipation, waiting to do another episode. And tonight, we're lucky enough to have an icon of the activity. The younger generation might not know it now, but if you play bass now, what you're doing directly goes back to our guest today.
Mm-hmm.
Is that safe to say?
Absolutely. And something that anybody who knew me when I marched knows about me is that even though I never got to march cadets,
Spoiler alert.
yeah, spoiler alert, I was abnormally obsessed with them, particularly because they were really good at what they did, but also they were a little bit mysterious.
Yes.
And
especially out here on the West Coast for us.
especially out here on the West Coast. So what I'm loving about today is an opportunity to get like a little bit of a peek to the actual story behind the stories that we would hear from the outside.
Peel the curtain back, as we would say.
Exactly. So we are super excited to welcome Jerede Brown.
Yeah, fat bass roll while we're playing. Welcome, Jerede.
Welcome, Jerede.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm honored and humbled and blessed to even be considered for an interview. So I appreciate it.
Well, it's funny because, like I said, I was really enamored with the cadets when I was marching, and there was only one name I knew from the outside, besides the couple of people I knew that actually marched cadets, and that was Jerede.
Yes.
Like literally, you were the one name that escaped, like from behind the wall to the outside world. That guy.
It's like the Lion King, if you say the name like Mufasa. It's
Yeah.
Jerede. But
Wow.
real quick, for those that don't know, Jerede marched cadets from 1987 through 1991,
Mm-hmm.
and then he took his talents over to Star of Indiana for their iconic 1993 show.
Mm-hmm.
So, without further ado, Jerede, why don't you give us a little bit into your background? I know your parents were like big into drum corps, so
Yeah.
just tell us about growing up, where you grew up, and how you got involved in the activity.
Yeah. So thanks again for having me. So my parents, I actually just recently posted a picture of my mom on Facebook. A very rare picture of my mom in uniform. So my mother, my uncles, all marched in, New York City Drum and Bugle Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, my mom marched in the Manhattaneers for a few years, and she was the drum major for some of those years. My father marched in Blessed Sacrament, and then he went on to march in the Skyliners. So I believe my father was in the color guard.
Oh, wow.
Back then. Yeah. So I was kind of hatched into drum corps. I used to go to, in particular, my father's rehearsals. So every now and again I would like ride the corps bus, with my dad to go to shows and stuff like that,
Oh,
go to
wow.
rehearsals and stuff. So I was literally hatched into the activity. My father got my neighbor, Thor Lester, involved in the activity as well. And he marched TMCC Warriors, and then he also marched in 84 Garfield Cadets. He played tenors.
So is that, real quick, is that whole DCA scene, what used to be called Senior Corps, I guess?
Yeah. So CMCC Warriors, that was a junior corps,
Okay.
but New York Skyliners was
Right.
DCA.
Right.
So
yeah, that whole DCA scene, it doesn't exist really out here on the East Coast. So it's always interesting to hear how that whole thing works out there on the East Coast.
Yeah. I've never marched it. I thought about it. A couple of guys, we marched with in cadets and stuff. We always joked around, that we were going to continue marching, just move our talents over to to like the corps and stuff like that. Just keep on marching with each other, but that never happened. But yeah, I started actually marching. Well, kind of in 1983 with the CMCC Warriors.
Okay.
So my father took me to a camp or to a couple of rehearsals in the wintertime. And actually, CMCC Warriors, rehearsals were literally maybe 10 blocks away from where I grew up in the Bronx.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I literally would just walk to rehearsal. But at the time, I think I was maybe 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Bob Craig was the percussion instructor.
Uh-huh.
And he and my father marched together at Blessed Sacrament. So my father, called Bob and said, "Hey, I think my son's ready. He can play cymbals. So I got a spot, but I wind up not marching the summer. I kind of stopped like right before the summer came. I think I was a little scared.
Well, how old were you in 1983? You must have been pretty young.
I was in 83. I was 9 or 10.
Wow.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. That's cool.
So the next year, 84 is when I started with the New York Lancers. And I started on cymbals. In 84, we were the Garden State champions 2 years in a row, drum champions, I think 2 years in a row. I played cymbals the first year, and then I think 85 I played bass, I believe, and then 86 I played bass in 86.
That's cool. So we're talking about back east, New York City, the Bronx, and maybe I'm just a West Coast guy, but when I think of New York City at that time, I think of movies like The Warriors. So were you walking around and then you got like the Gramercy Griffs and then the baseball furies chasing after you down the street?
No, no, it wasn't like that.
Oh.
It's like in any inner city, you got your rough parts. You got some parts, you don't want to, walk around at nighttime, you know what I mean? Or at least by yourself at night. But for the most part, it was just like any inner city, it was okay. It wasn't bad.
That's cool, man. I mean, I was saying, I'm kind of a product of pop culture. So, my whole thing is, I picture that, and then I picture, Run DMC hanging on the corner, and South Bronx, South Bronx, all that cool stuff, man.
Yeah. You had a lot of back then. You had a lot of the big boom boxes. With the people carrying on their shoulders and stuff, and the Bingos and the shell top Adidas.
Heck
and
yeah!
all that stuff.
And I picture like breakdancing battles breaking out in the subways.
You have to carry your cardboard with you everywhere, just in case.
Yeah, you had some of that. You had some folks on the streets, in the corners, battling each other, battle rapping and stuff. And, but it was all good.
So were you like Team Adidas or were you like Team Kango or what were you rocking back then?
Man, I don't know, man. I think I had a little bit of everything. I think it's funny, man. I remember my first pair of Nikes, and I actually cried because I didn't want them.
I could believe that. They were probably like the Nike Cortez or something like that. Yeah.
They were actually, I think, the Air Force Ones, but like the low cut version of them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want these things, and I cried. My mom's like, no, you're gonna wear those, and they were like white with the blue swoosh.
Yeah.
But unbeknownst to me, that was the beginning of Nike. And I just didn't realize it at the time. But yeah, I had Nikes. I had some Adidas. Lottos. I don't know if you remember Lottos.
Yeah, Lottos and Fila and yeah.
I never had Filas, but Lottos, and then like the Reebok. Reebok was heavy back then too.
Yeah, they have BKs back there or no?
British Knights.
Yeah, yep. British Knights. Yeah.
British Knights, Hush Puppies, and see, I went to all boys private Catholic school, so I was rocking like penny loafers and stuff
Yeah, yeah.
instead of putting
You
penny.
dress like Michael Jackson on the Billie Jean.
Yeah, or a little like the Fresh Prince a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah, yeah,
We had to wear like the gray uniform pants with the sports jacket, the blue sports jacket or the blue cardigan
yeah.
and a top. So it was, but we funked it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Put a
Yeah,
little spice in
of course.
it.
That's cool.
So,
That's cool.
yeah,
I totally
yeah,
dig all that. I totally dig like that whole era of watching MTV and seeing that whole New York scene, because I guess that's where MTV was based. So you'd see a
yeah.
lot of that stuff, and I ain't gonna lie, I grew up watching movies like Crush Groove and Beach Street
Hmm.
and The Warriors, and I just really dug that whole East
Yeah,
Coast New York City vibe.
yeah. But the funny thing is that I was always gone in the summertime.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because of drum corps. When I was in the Lancers, we'd have like first tour and second tour. So like first tour, we rehearsed during the week, but like we would go away during the weekends and then come back. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And then second tour, we were gone for like 2 or 3 weeks straight. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So I was always like not really around, and then especially when I went to Garfield, I was gone, so I missed a lot of stuff.
yeah.
Um, and I can't complain, man. My drum corps career, life in general for me has been great. I've been blessed. Uh, so knock on wood. So far, everything that has come my way, I've been truly, truly blessed, man.
For
Not
sure.
only not only like personally, but just with drum corps, with professional career, you name it. You know I live in Delaware now. I have a beautiful, beautiful home, beautiful wife, beautiful kids. Life's been very good.
Can't ask
That's
for anything
awesome.
more.
Exactly, exactly. So, sorry, I kind of went off on a little path there, but we'll get back to 1985. You're with the Lancers. Are you
Yeah.
watching like the top 12 cores at that time, or are you just like,
Oh hell yeah.
okay,
Hell yeah.
cool? So,
So
like,
I
what was your favorite stuff growing up? Like, what were your cores or drum lines that really got you
well
to like, wow?
Bridgman, uh Bridgman 82, like 81, 82, 83.
Hmm.
Like that's where I was gonna go. Blue Devils, I love Blue Devils too, like the
Yeah,
drum line. But I just thought that there was no way I was gonna be able to make it out to California.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But it was Bridgman, for quite some time. But until I saw Garfield in '83, and to be honest with you, I didn't really see Garfield like the entire show. So I'll tell everybody this story. It's funny. So you know we didn't have a car, when I was coming up. So um, my father, there was a show in Rutgers University, and my father said, we're going to the show, and we took the bus. We went to the New York Port Authority and took the bus as far as we could take it, and we got off somewhere in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and got off the side of the highway, and we just started walking. And I think someone picked us up and took us the rest of the way to the stadium. So by the time we got to the show was pretty much over.
oh,
And the last core that was coming on was the Garfield Cadets. And at the time, the stadium, I don't know if you've ever seen Rutgers University Stadium, but it's pretty big now. But back then, it wasn't big at all. It was more or less like bleachers kind of. And so I remember, back then, like I said, I think I was probably like 9 or 10 years old, something like that. And as a little kid, you're antsy and you can't keep still, so you're just like bouncing around. So I'm in the stands bouncing around, playing with something probably.
uh-huh.
Next thing you know, I see, in the corner, back corner, the Garfield Cadets marching on the field, single file, and like it just captured me. I was in awe because all I saw was this just glow
Yep.
over the core. And I just stood still and I just watched them come on the field. They hadn't even played a note yet. And I was just like, wow.
And I can only imagine what that was like as a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, like through those eyes. I remember what it was like, you know, my first exposure to drum corps as a 14-year-old, but as a 10-year-old, I mean, it's like the magic level goes up, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of how you perceive it.
Now you got to remember too, my parents were in drum corps. So like we would have basic blocks in the living room.
That's
like
awesome.
My father was like, all right, let's go. Like, so we're marching. I'm marching with my dad in the living room. So, so I was ready, even though I was like a little, piece of, what, I was ready, you know what I mean? And so when I saw them, I said, that's where I'm going. And so the next year, at that time, one of my idols, Michael Jones, that was his first year in the Corps, and he came from the New York Lancers. My neighbor Thor, who lived right next door to me, that next year in preparation for the '84 season, Michael Jones, Thor, Carl Simpson, Anthony Pepe Paradiso, and Pam, there's a girl named Pam who marched in the color guard. They all had a meeting at Thor's house right next door. So I hear about the meeting. I'm in my pajamas. I go next door, and they're all in at the dinner table discussing camp, how they're going to get there. If everybody had their money to pay for camp fee and all that good stuff. And here it is, I guess now I'm like 10 or 11 now. I'm going. They're like, shut up, Jerede, you're not going. I'm like, I'm going. They're all discussing about going to the next Garfield cadet camp.
Yeah.
I'm going to Garfield. That's where I want to go. I'm going. They're like, no. So I'm in like probably a onesie or something like that. I'm like, I'm going. And they're like, no, you're not going. They're like, you're too young. You can't go. And I'm like, no, I'm going. So anyway, make a long story short, obviously I didn't go. So I marched. My whole mission was that's where I was going to end up at. So
right.
84 in the Lancers, I played cymbals. I tried to suck up as much knowledge as I could, you know what I mean? As far as anything and everything, even though I played cymbals, I learned a lot that year, basics, then they put me on bass drum in the 85 that next year. And of course I learned so much more there. And again, you got to remember, Bob Craig was my percussion instructor. So, and he marched with my dad at Blessed Sacrament. So I learned so much from not only Bob Craig, but also the guys in the Lancers in the line. They were my brothers and sisters. They looked after me. They taught me so much. So fast forward, I finally was able to make it to a cadet camp, Garfield camp, and I'm on bass drum.
Is this in '86?
This is the winter of '86.
Okay.
So guess what drum they have me on? And at the time, I'm like, what, 14, maybe like 13 and a half, 14 years old. I'm on number 5.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
the number five is like probably like the same size as I was, as far as height is concerned.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew, I'm not going to be playing number 5, you know what I mean, and marching that drill. So they wind up putting me in the cymbal room, and there was only one spot in the cymbal line at the time, and but there were probably like 20 to 30 people vying for this one spot.
Wow.
And I was just determined. I was like, I'll play a freaking triangle if I had to, I'll be the best freaking triangle player or the best cowbell player as long as I, wear this uniform and as long as I join this corps. So then the final cut came and they didn't cut me. They they made me an alternate.
Okay.
So but I didn't care. I was like, great. That means I can still go on tour. They're like, yeah, you come on tour. I'm like, great. I get a uniform. They're like, yeah, you get a uniform. I'm like, great. I'm like, cool. This is cool. And so when I went home, my father was pissed. He was like, what? He was like, they made you an alternate. I was like, yeah, but I get to go on tour. I get a uniform. I get everything. I get the jacket. My father was like, no. So he called Hannum that night.
Wow.
The rehearsal was over Sunday. He called Tom Hannum that night. And my father was like, you don't know what you have in my son. My son was born into this. And I think you guys are making a big mistake. And so I guess to make a long story short, Hannum said, well, he's an alternate. He can still come to the camps. He's still in the Corps. My father was like, no, he needs to, it needs to be a spot. So, I kept going to camps. I knew all my parts. The guy that they ended up giving the spot to, he all of a sudden, since the moment he got the spot, he all of a sudden start not coming to camps.
Oh, wow.
So, I was, learning the parts. Then it came time to learning drill. I was learning the parts and the drill, and then when he would finally show up, I'm sitting next to the genius. I'm sitting next to Zingali. I'm sitting next to Mark Sylvester.
Wow.
And just watching them work their magic, as a 14 and a half year old little boy, I just remember watching, like I said, 83, 84, 85, 86, and watching, those whiplash moves, quote unquote, whiplash moves at the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting next to the genius who created all that, you know what I mean? And I was pretty much their gopher. They wanted smokes, I would go try to find cigarettes or whatever, or if they needed something passed from the field up to the top, I would do that. And then one day I think we were practicing in Garfield, New Jersey, as a matter of fact. One day, I was sitting next to George and Mark while the Corps was doing drill, and there was a hole, and Zagali's going crazy. He's like, why is there a hole in the cymbal line? and they're like, oh, well, Tackleberry is not here. And they're like, well, who's usually in the spot? And I'm like, I'm usually in the spot. Well, get down there. What are you doing?
Wow, that's awesome.
So anyway, to make a long story short, they ended up cutting the guy because I knew all the parts and I knew the drill. They're like, why are we struggling trying to get you in when Jerede already knows everything? So
right.
I ended up, through perseverance and just showing up and just being willing to do anything, I ended up with the spot. And actually to this very day, whenever I see Hannum, it's just a joke that we've had now since 1987. I always tell him, like, you almost cut me. You almost cut me. He's like, yep, I know.
So was this for the 87 show or for the 86 show?
87.
87. Okay. The Appalachian Spring.
Jerede, let me ask you something. So you had already been on tour. You had already had drum corps experience up to this point. You had this teaching in the home, from your parents. Yeah. But still, it's the Garfield Cadets, right? And still, you're 14 at the time. Did you feel like, oh, this is natural, like I got this? Or were you like, was there a little bit of, you were overwhelmed, like, whoa, this is a really big step up? What did it feel like?
No, I mean, from like the very first day that you step foot in camp, of course you're like, holy shit. I'm sorry, am I allowed to curse?
It's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely, you're allowed to go ahead.
You're like, holy, this is it. You know what I mean? I'm at the Garfield Cadets, but once you strap in, I just knew I can do this. And I remember I remember distinctively, standing there in the drum room during rehearsals, and Hannon would like literally be standing like this next to me, and I guess it was like I guess it was a test to see if he can distract me from doing what I was supposed to be doing, and it didn't work. I'm just like I know what you're doing, I know what you're trying to do. That shit's not going to work with me.
And it's funny because like at that age, our self perception of ourselves is probably totally different than how we actually are for 14-year-olds. Because you look at 14-year-olds and it's like, they're 14. But when that's you, you're like, no, I'm mature and
Yeah,
I'm adult. But
yeah,
that's awesome. It's for drum corps 14, a top 12 corps.
And also,
yeah,
I'm willing to bet. I mean, that was a special line, as we all know.
Yeah.
In terms of how things played out. Did you know that?
No.
On the way?
Yeah.
Did anybody know that? I know that like Angst has talked about there were times on tour where you were getting popped some serious numbers.
Yeah.
So, the idea of like doing something like getting a perfect score in drums was a real possibility by the time finals rolled around. Did you guys ever lose drums that year?
I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And we just had, it's funny, we just had a Santa Clara, 1987 Santa Clara, 1987 Garfield Cadet, like Zoom meeting.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Like a hang.
Yeah, actually you'll probably see that coming soon. It's a whole series coming soon.
Yeah.
And just like I told them during that series, I was oblivious to a lot. My job was I didn't want to get yelled at.
Mm-hmm.
I had the blinders on, my head was down. My goal was I don't want anyone saying anything to Jerede. So it's as far as like popping scores early, like a lot of stuff I found out during the interview, to be honest with you.
Right.
Oh wow.
I was just oblivious. I was happy to be there. You know what I mean? I just wanted to just do my job and make sure I didn't get left when it was time to leave, a bus or a stadium or something like that. I was oblivious to it all, to be honest with you.
Who was on that 87 staff back then? Like the drum staff. Who was the drum staff?
So we had Unks, obviously Hannum, we had Dave Hall. We called him Blockhead.
What did he teach, or were they just all general techs?
Well, he was like a tenor, and then he was like also like a drum maintenance guy too. We had Amy Savage. She was like the cymbal tech. We had I forget his name, but his first name was Rob. I forget his last name. He was like the pit guy. Tenor. There's a guy named Tim was his first name, but I don't remember his last name. But then we also had, Michael Jones. He was kind of like a student teacher kind of. So he was, even though he was in the line, he was kind of
player
like
coach.
Yeah. Steve Kieffer was the bass tech, of course.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much all I remember.
No. Steve Kieffer, when did he get there to cadets?
Steve got to Garfield, I believe, in either, I think it was 83. I think it was 83 or 84, one of those. I think 84.
Okay. 84. And what a lot of people probably nowadays don't know, at least here on the West Coast, I mean, he is like the guy that pretty much helped. There were like two names, Steve Kieffer and then Kent Cater from Vanguard. They are like the bass drum. What's a good term for it? The gods? I hate to use that term, but yeah, I mean, the founders of bass drumming.
We call Steve HB Daddy.
HB Daddy, yeah, the Holy Bass Daddy, yeah. And deservedly so, because I mean, he's responsible for cranking out a lot of good bass. I mean, better than good, excellent bass lines,
Yeah. And his teaching style is very, very unique. I mean, I don't think he ever like raised his voice or anything, man. he definitely has a very, very unique teaching style, and obviously it shows.
Yeah.
We all love him, even to this very day. He doesn't teach anymore, but I mean, for a guy to last from 83, 84 up to, I think the last time he taught was maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think his total tenure was like maybe 25 years,
Right.
something like that.
And I remember like the early 2000s, cadets came out here to the West Coast, and went to the Riverside show, and one of the guys I drum with out here ended up marching cadets in the 90s. John Burbank, he played quads.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, this is Steve Kieffer, and I was like in total awe because I knew the name, but to be able to put the name with the face, it was like, oh man, this is like to me like better than meeting anybody else in the world.
And obviously this is I mean, kids today don't realize that back then, I mean, there was no social media, no
Right.
cell phones, none of that stuff. So if you had heard of somebody, there was a reason, because there people didn't have some kind of online presence where, oh yeah, like I've heard of that guy. No, if you heard of somebody with all the communication limitations of that time, it really meant something. And Steve was definitely like an icon.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was very day, especially in HB land.
Oh yeah, I bet. So
Yeah, we hadn't seen Steve in quite some time, and so he recently resurfaced, because we have this Holy Bass reunion. You got to make it out next time we're all free to be out and about. But you got to make it out to our Holy Bass reunions. We have it every single year in Allentown,
Mm-hmm.
and so he hadn't come in a couple of years, and so he showed up and surprised everybody. Not this past August, but the August before. And I mean, even the kids who were never taught by him were just like in awe,
yes,
Yeah.
And,
yes.
it was exactly the same. He cracked. I mean, he has when he teaches, everything is with some kind of joke associated with it. You know what I mean? So you're always laughing. Your spirits are always up. He never tries to belittle you or anything like that. And so during the course of the years that I've taught, I've kind of, at least I try to take some of those characteristics over with me, when I teach as well.
That's cool. Yeah, in fact, he and I became friends on Facebook, and I sent him a care package from my work of what I do, and he was very appreciative of that, and it was cool to be able to send him something. It was like my honor to be able to do that for him.
Yeah.
So back to '87. So you're marching '87. The beginning of that year, from the videos I've seen or what I've heard, it was like, I don't know. Now we just call it typical cadet stuff. It started kind of rough, and then everything just week by week, you just start chiseling away, and then by the time you get to finals, it's like boom. Is that a good way to summarize that summer?
So again, I was I don't even know if I was in high school yet. I think I was. I don't know, but so I was never really there. Like the first couple of years, like especially when they had move-ins, I was never moving.
Oh, that's right. You're in high school still. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
so when it was time to go on tour, like I would, like when the Corps was like getting ready to leave, I was pretty much like trying to meet them. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, the unbeknownst to me, the Corps was awful in the beginning of the year. But I'm like, shoot, I'm living my dream right now.
You just happy to be there, yeah.
Right, exactly. So I'm just doing my thing, and I don't want to get yelled at, so I'm making sure I'm where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there, and again, I'm on the ends of everything because I was the number one symbol. So I to make sure I'm on my dot. I'm making my connections.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in typical fashion, the Garfield Cadets have always been known to be not so good in the beginning. And then, like you said, kind of creep up, and then you usually take like a week off in the middle of the summer and change the whole entire freaking show.
Yeah.
We have what's called Def Camp. I don't know if you guys heard of that.
No.
I've never heard that term. Not
You never
here.
heard
No.
of it?
No.
Wow. What about you, George? Never heard of Def Camp?
Never heard of Def Camp. So you
Yeah.
guys wouldn't like, you just wouldn't have any shows. You would just rehearse.
We take an entire week off and change, depending on the year, change, if not 70-75% of the show
Wow.
to maybe 90% of the show almost.
Now, is that coming from like the visual staff, or was it like music wise, or
Everything.
really?
Music, visual, you name it, drill. And so we would take a week off, and we would stay at this place called Governor Livingston in New Jersey. And I hate that place. It was like it was cold showers. The showers were ice cold.
Horrible.
Is it a school, or is it?
Yeah, it's a high school in New Jersey.
Okay.
And the showers are absolutely ice cold, and the field it was like infested with beetles.
Oh wow.
So we would every year we would go there, and next thing you know, it's like it clicks, and then we're like climbing up the charts, and we're either winning, win DCI, or we're come fairly close to doing it.
Yeah.
And that's always been amazing to me, especially like watching, as a younger kid, watching the Corps all those years, and trying to figure out how the hell do they do that? How do they do that? And then obviously being in it, you're like, okay, this is how they do it.
Yeah.
So when you get there, it's almost as if you don't want to let the gods of cadets pass, down, because this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, sacrifice with the hot showers. You're supposed to, in some cases not shower at all because you don't want to freaking freeze your what's off,
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, well, this is what the cadets from years past, this is what they did, you know what I mean? And so it's almost like a rite of passage, you know what I mean? It's almost like a badge of honor that, yeah, we're going to Def Camp, even though you freaking hated it, because rehearsals were freaking all day and all night, And but you knew when we got out of it, it was going to be a whole new Corps. We were going to have a different pep to our step, you know what I mean? And we were going to come out and do some damage,
Right.
So,
and I sort of alluded to this earlier, that cadets in sort of like, if there was a DCU instead of an MCU, like the drum corps universe, cadets figure really prominently. But one of those, in one of the ways they figure really prominently is, like I said before, just there were some things about the cadets that were a little bit mysterious, right?
Right.
When you got there, along with exactly everything you're describing, was there a list of, now that you're a cadet, here are the rules, here's what we do? Or was it just something that you learned by going through it?
No, I think it's just something that you learn by going through it. Like the only thing that I remember is the only thing you could drink in uniform was like water.
Mm-hmm.
But it made sense because you have cream pants, and so if you accidentally spill juice, or especially red juice, on your pants, you got a red stain. You can't sit down, because if you sit down, you're gonna have dirt marks on your pants.
Right.
We didn't talk to people in uniform.
That's what I was going to ask about. Yeah. So what was the rule around that?
No, it was just staying focused.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to limit the distractions.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
That was pretty much it. It wasn't like, we hated everybody. It was
it wasn't like we're better than you or anything like that.
No, no. One thing that we were taught was like just the utmost respect for all the other teams. You know what I mean?
Sure.
No matter like how many times they may spit at you or
Mm-hmm.
curse at you or call you names, it was always, thank you very much. You have a nice
Yeah.
drum corps.
No matter how much they would throw Jolly Ranchers at you or bump your drums.
Yeah. Now in Crossman, we would be on retreat with Crossman, and because we were kind of like cousins, I guess,
Yeah.
because we scored with Crossman, we'd be on a retreat, and then their drum line would like throw candy at us, and we would pick it up. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
But yeah, there were times where you feel like a whoop, and you're like, okay, someone's throwing something at us.
Yeah. I can tell you from the outside, it was something that I especially was like really aware of, because I remember like Pete Sapadin, who went there in '91, former Blue Devil. I remember seeing Pete on tour and being like, damn, I can't go talk to him, because he's in uniform. But one really sort of amazing sort of end to that story. I aged out in '95, and I forget what his name was, but the center snare from Cadets in '95 reached out to me. And I was like, what is going on? In what universe is this happening?
Is this a trap?
And exactly. And this was, I don't think it was ever in uniform, but it was definitely like after a show and stuff. And we did a thing where we exchanged sort of like the canon of music. So there was this, this collection of Blue Devil music that I had, and he had, the corollary for Cadets, and we kind of did like a little exchange thing. But I remember that being a huge deal to me because I was like, are things changing? It's like this is the wall sort of coming down. It's interesting, especially about the period of time, like during the 80s and early 90s, where the rituals and the traditions were so strong with every group. They had these really strong identities, and everybody had their own sort of set of rules that they followed. And that, and you knew that if you were in the community, you knew that, you understood those things, and it kind of made each place special.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I remember, my first year, we used to always do the Garfield parade in Garfield, New Jersey. And that was probably one of the longest parades that I've ever marched, ever. But anyway, make a long story short, the New York Lancers also did that Garfield parade every year. And I knew that. And so that was my first year. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the first time I'm going to see, my old teammates at a parade. They're going to see me with the Garfield Cadets. But then they're going to think that I'm stuck up because I can't talk to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And sure enough, I'm at the parade, and right before, we're all, just hanging out before the parade actually stepped off. And then all of a sudden I start seeing some of the New York Lancers coming, and they're like, oh, hey, what's up, Jerede? What's up, Jerede? And I couldn't say anything.
Right.
And I started hearing, oh, he thinks he's this, that, and the other. And I'm just,
oh man,
no, it's not that. You already know that we can't, we can't converse. You know what I mean? Because we're uniform, But yeah, it was all about like we can talk to each other, cadet to cadet, but we couldn't talk to other people because we had to just stay locked in and stay focused. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and one question about '87 in particular, because you had mentioned no matter what any other corps did, right? In terms of like the way they would interact with you guys. Our last episode, we had Kevin Murray, who was one of my teachers and marched Blue Devils in '87, and there is this story, and sort of legend, and now there's even like video on YouTube of '87 finals retreat. you know. And so we heard it from
I knew it.
their side, you know. I
What was
mean,
their side? I want to hear their side.
well, I mean that they were,
They were pissed.
they were pissed and they sort of let it out. And you know, to Kevin's credit, he was like, he had some conversations with some people afterwards, you know, to the effect of like, maybe, you know, come on guys, you know. But there's your guys' side of it, you know. And so I'm curious what you guys were feeling in that moment. Maybe you guys were just like, who cares? We won, you know, and we're good. But what was that moment like? I mean, and you specifically as like just, you know, a young kid, first year in the Corps, were you even aware that there was that heat?
Oh, hold on real quick. I want to go grab some popcorn for this one because I know this George. If he wasn't going to ask it, I was going to ask it because I've always wanted to know the cadets' perspective of that whole '87 retreat. Because I mean, the tensions. I even said in the last episode, the tensions were, at least it seems like it was pretty tight. And then like you guys not knowing you were going to win between you and Vanguard and. You know, there's still controversy to that to this day. But all right, hold on. I got my popcorn. Go ahead, Jerry. Let's hear it.
You serious? You gonna get popcorn?
No, I'm just messing. But go ahead.
Yeah, we were wedged. We were wedged right in between Santa Clara and BD.
Wow.
And
so you were taking it from both sides.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I was happy. I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, my first year. And I won. You know what I mean? So I was like grinning from freaking ear to ear. But then we started hearing, you know, the curses and everything coming from. My back was facing the Blue Devils.
Okay.
And I mean, we started hearing everything and spitting at us and
really, wow.
Yeah, it was really, 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 really bad. And then it got to the point where a couple of people at Garfield, they actually had to get in between me and the Blue Devils because I was like the youngest one, so they were afraid that something was going to happen to me.
Sure.
But I think the perspective from everybody else in the line was we were just shocked. You know, we were obviously happy that we won, and we were happy that we won drums.
Yeah.
But we were shocked at, you know, the level of anger and profanity and spitting and just vulgarity coming at us. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then we were also in awe when they actually when Blue Devils started playing to us because they played some cool stuff.
Sure.
You know?
Oh yeah. Sure.
And then we were obviously surprised, some people were, walking in our block and stumbling in our block and stuff like that.
Really?
So we were shocked.
Okay. Yeah,
we were shocked at that. And the same thing with SEV, me growing up in the activity and, marching in the Lancers and the Warriors, you think about Blue Devils and you think about Santa Clara as like the creme de la creme, you know what I mean? The cream of the crop as far as like class and all that good stuff.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that they're not class because they are classy organizations, but it was just at that moment, and I guess in the heat of battle, and when you're practicing long extended hours in 100+ degree weather, and the main goal is at least for them, the main goal was to win, and that didn't happen. And then I guess they felt that we weren't worthy of winning the drum trophy.
Right.
There was just a lot of anger, and we were very surprised at it, that it would spill out. And then I think Santa Clara, they turned their drums over and bust their bottom heads.
Pop the bottom heads. Yeah.
Wow.
Soprano players were playing like this close to cadet faces and stuff like that.
I never knew that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really, like when you go see the video again, you can look in the background, you see Santa Clara moving up the right to the line, and like with their bells right in the cadet's face, you know.
Right.
But like again, the one thing that the cadets always, the cadet way is, you know, thank you very much. You have a very nice drum corps.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what it is, you know, within reason though, because I remember, I think it was 88 or 89. Another corps was trying to play, I think it's called Drum Wars or something like that, where you hit each other's drums or something like that.
Bumper drums. Yeah, and yeah, we don't need to say the core, but yeah.
And I remember distinctively looking at one of those guys, and I had that look on. I wish you would do
Right.
that to my.
Sure.
I wish you know, because there wouldn't be the cadet way. You know what I mean?
You know,
it would be in the Bronx way.
Yeah, and you know, I remember my first year in that same corps. I'm sure George knows what corps we're talking about, and being lined up next to him during the retreat block, and all of a sudden I feel this dink on my drum. I'm like, what the heck is that? But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of those guys from that corps now, and it's cool. They're like super cool guys. You know, once you peel back the mystique of that corps and you get to know the guys that marched in that corps, you know, they're good dudes. You know, but it's just, you know, adolescent, I guess. I don't know.
But then also on a deeper level, and this is part of the conversation that we had with Kevin on the last episode, was that, you know, and maybe, you know, younger listeners won't be aware of this, but during the 80s, cadets were really pushing the activity, right? Things were changing, innovating a lot of things, moving, especially visually, moving a lot more, and doing a lot more with show design. So for cadets, it wasn't really about repeating the same stuff over and over again. It was about what else can we do? And, you know, meanwhile, Blue Devils had won drums 4 years in a row, you know, and 87, you know, essentially the activity sort of sending a message saying that's not going to be good enough anymore. Right. And that, and you guys being the sort of the image of here's what the future kind of looks like a little more. That hits on a deeper level than who played cleaner. Right. If that makes sense. You know. But you got your medal, you were happy, you made it through tour, I'm sure, you know, like in terms of your 14-year-old mind. Then you go home and you're like, you want to keep doing this? You know?
Yeah.
And so